This is our 50th anniversary. The place started in 1960 through the good graces of a few local people of interest who became people of influence here. The last still living is Elnora Milliken. She and John Milliken, along with Camilla and Anstamoose, and Doug and Margaret Hill, and Barbara and Bob Bradford were the original founders. There were 8 of them who came together with, then brought in a few others very quickly when they knew they needed it, and opened after discussion in 1959 and 1960. They opened with a play called You Can't Take It With You.
That's playing this year.
That is
this coming season, right?
Wow, what a coincidence.
What year did you come into the Old Town Playhouse?
I arrived here in 1976, 33 years ago. And I've been involved off and on. I haven't always been able to be consistently involved. I was gone for 7 years, applying my craft elsewhere. And I also worked for the college for a while when my activities there were just too demanding to allow me to be involved here. So there were a few years in between that was probably about 10 years that I was not specifically involved, but certainly have been connected to the Playhouse since 1976.
You've been here a few years.
Yeah.
What 3 great memories do you have that stand out more than the other?
I would say the first show I was involved in, but not really. It was being cast as Henry Higgins in 1979 at the young age of 25, or thereabouts, 26 maybe, and feeling that I was, I didn't have a shot, at this. I thought, well, this will be interesting, and I auditioned for, chorus basically, and had the director call me up late on the second night of auditions after I had left and asked me if I would take the part of Henry Higgins, and I was shocked, dumbfounded, and of course said yes. And that was a excuse me, that was a very I wouldn't call it a turning point, but certainly was very satisfying for still what I consider to be a young performer, even though I'd been actively involved in theater for over 10 years by that point in time. It still was important, and it gave me an important role here at the Playhouse, and subsequent to that I got involved in the board and was the vice president during a period of time back then. So I got very involved in, I hate to call it the politics, but it was the politics of the theater. Began directing, and so that was a real, even though I had started earlier a year before and started establishing myself, that was the one that was the most gratifying, certainly.
What other present individuals affiliated with the theater now have the same history that you have, that go back
to the 30-some years?
Yes, when you first started here.
You can probably count on 2 hands, probably about maybe 10 people that are still actively involved. There are some that still join us here at the theater for whatever reason, but it's for those of us who were very committed, 30 years, so what? Big deal. We're still here. But that changes. The life of a community theater has significant ebb and flow. Usually, I would say within 7, on a 7-year basis.
Mm-hmm.
And it always appears to me that it's a 7-year cycle that we run through, thereabouts, where you start to see an influx. When I joined in 1976, there was a huge influx of new blood into this theater. And we kind of ran the show for during the early 80s into the mid 80s, And about that time, right around, I'd say 83 or so, a whole new group came in. By then I actually was gone. I was in Ann Arbor working for the University of Michigan programs, theater programs. And but there was a new group that came in. Brian Dungeon, who's a stalwart member of the theater now, was one that came in at that time. So were the Curtises, came in during that period, who are still here and very strong and very active. Number of others during that period. And then in the early 90s, again, it happened, and then we saw another transition really in the early part of this decade. And that was a major transition. You know, going back to a little bit back to the question you had previously asked, one of my other great moments was being hired to take on this position. I mean,
and that was how many years back?
That was 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years now. Or will be in November. And I think it's 4 or 5. I'd have to figure it. 2005 is when I started, so I guess it's about 5 years. No, 4 years. That's what it is. 4 years.
You need to get the calculator.
Yeah, right.
Get the calendar.
I'm not good with numbers. Not particularly good with numbers. I have to have. That's why my calculator sits on my desk. I live by that thing. But getting this position for so many years, I mean, it seemed it was very logical. I probably should have been in this position in some respects. I should have gone after this position many years before. I have a master's degree in theater administration. This is what I do and used to do and got away from, where I was teaching, and then I was handling the educational aspect of theater, not the financial.
I have another question.
Administrative.
Going back to the person you were when you first stepped through the doors here at the Old Town Playhouse, and then look forward all the way up to 2009.
The piss and vinegar days to now, huh?
Yeah. What feelings do you have? Does it meet your the aspirations that you had for the theater? Are you pleased with the direction that the theater has developed to at this point?
There was a period of time where I would not have said that. The 90s were a very rough period of time for the theater.
And why was that?
Financially, like many community theaters, we grew up primarily as a social club. It was an organization of people who wanted to do theater, who wanted to be with people who wanted to do theater, and spent a lot of time together. I mean, when I joined in the in the 70s, I lived and breathed my friends who were here. That was my social set, and you know, we did everything together. If there was nothing I would do that was outside of my social group that really came from here. Work didn't seem to have that same impact. It was what this theater was. And many community theaters are like that, and not all of them ever get out of that. There was always a look at this theater that, boy, this theater has the opportunity and the ability to grow. They had their own building early in their history, in the after less than 15 years of being in existence and trying to facilitate a home, they actually got one, and that was an important step. Demanded a lot, and grants were sought on top of ticket sales, and that was your budget. Whatever you got in the grant cycle was the budget for the year, and that determined a lot of things.